This conference will now be recorded.
I didn't get the thingy. What's it? This conference will now be recorded. Anyway, I didn't get it. So the light's on. Yeah, it's doing its thing. So, well, welcome everybody to Revelation Study Guide number 9, the development of the beasts, for our Bible class tonight. And we will carry on. So I thought, as by way of a reading, that we would start by reading Revelation chapter 12, which is not quite the first appearance of the beast in Revelation. The first appearance of the beast in Revelation is in chapter 11, in chapter 11 and verse 7, in the middle of the story about the two witnesses. Well, maybe let's have a look at that on our way through. It says that in chapter 11 and verse 7, it says, "And when they have finished their testimony, that is the two witnesses, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them." And then goes on to talk about all the other things that happen after that. And so in the story of Revelation, this is the first appearance and occurrence of the beast here, in the story. So we've come 11 chapters, and here we've introduced to it. And it doesn't really tell us, it just appears in the story and doesn't really give us any explanation. And that's because the explanation of the beast is now going to happen in chapters 12 and 13 and so on. So that's what we're going to do. But maybe before we read together, I thought we'd just have a bit of a reminder of some of the things which we've done together recently, that we've looked in the Revelation Study Guide at signs and symbols. And then Phil took us through some Old Testament background in Zechariah and Daniel. We looked at Babylon, literal Babylon in the past, and then the mystery Babylon of Revelation. And we explored that a little bit further with John just the other week, looking at the tale of two cities. And one of the things I think we've seen both through John's class and then Phil's class and then previous classes that we've had has been that in Revelation we've got a whole long list of contrasts. We've got contrasts between two cities. We've got contrasts between two women, two types of creatures. We've got lots of contrasts, the righteous and the wicked. And if you recall, we've had a look at some of those contrasts, but the contrasts are really two ways. There's the way of God and the people of God, who are the bride, the Lamb, the Lamb's wife, Jerusalem, the righteous, the saints. That's one way. And then there is the other way, which is the harlot, the beasts, Babylon, and those things, the wicked, the unrighteous, all of those things. So we've got these two, which are representative of another way. So we've got these two ways, and I think we've seen that previously in our previous classes. So here in Revelation, we have come to another one of those contrasts, the development of the beast. Now in Revelation, the development of the beast and the beast itself is contrasted to the Lamb. So we've got the contrast of the wild beast. I don't have any idea whether this is what it really looked like, by the way. I've got much more confidence that the Lamb is more like this. I don't have any idea whether the beast really looked like that, so don't hold me to that. But it's a beast. It's hideous and ugly. There is a contrast between, I know it says that there's a lamb as if it was slain, so I didn't, okay, I know. But there's a contrast in Revelation between the beast and the lamb. Now, the good thing is, of course, we know the end of the story. The end of the story is that the lamb is victorious because he is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and those that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And the beast, as big and ugly and powerful as the beast might appear to be, at whatever stage of its evolution and development, is not going to be victorious in the end. So I thought that we would read for ourselves the first real, full explanation and description of the beast at its introduction in chapter 12. So if we just read around here in person, I'm sorry for those of you who are online who probably aren't going to hear any of this. We're just going to read Revelation chapter 12. So if you read along at home, that would be great. So maybe Robert, if you could just start. We'll just read a verse each and go around. I think there's only 17 verses. So
a great and wondrous sign appeared in heaven: a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head.
She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth.
And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads.
His tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung into the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that he might devour her child the moment it was born. She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne.
And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God, so that there she might be nourished for 1,260 days.
Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back.
But he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven.
And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, "Now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night."
And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death.
Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he has but a short time.
When the dragon saw that he had been hurled to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child.
The woman was given 2 wings of an eagle, a great eagle, so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the desert, where she would be taken care of for a time, times, and half a time, out of the serpent's reach.
Then from his mouth the serpent spewed water like a river, to overtake the woman and sweep her away with the torrent.
But the earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the river that the dragon had spewed out of his mouth.
Then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to wage war against the rest of her offspring, those who keep God's commands and hold fast their testimony about Jesus.
Okay, thank you. All right, so here in Revelation chapter 12, we've got the introduction of the dragon to the story, the dragon that being the first beast that we're introduced to in Revelation after chapter 11, verse 7. And in chapter, we've got chapter 12 here, and then in chapter 13, we're going to find, here's the development of the beast of Revelation. Here's the places where that occurs. So Revelation chapter 11, we've got the beast that ascends from the bottomless pit. We've got the great red dragon of Revelation chapter 12. We've got the beast of the sea, which appears in Revelation 13 at the beginning of the chapter. We've got the beast of the earth that appears in chapter 13, verse 11, about halfway through. And then in chapter 17, we've got this scarlet-coloured beast. So these are the 4 beasts that occur in Revelation. And we've got some nifty pictures down here. Again, don't hold me to the artistic representations. They're just different from each. There's a development in different phases of the beast in Revelation. So we read about the great red dragon in chapter 12. Now we could spend all of tonight and probably a number of other nights just exploring and filling out Revelation chapter 12. But we're not going to, because we're talking about the development of the beasts. So we can't do that. But, so we're just going to choose some things to see about the beast in Revelation chapter 12. We're not going to explore everything else in there. And one of the things that we want to see, well, I got the same thing. Sorry, did you want to see the bigger pictures? We've got bigger pictures. It's the same, by the way, just the same as the previous slide. But, some people like pictures. So we've got the great red dragon in chapter 12 being cast out of heaven. And then we've got this appearance of this sea beast in chapter 13, this earth beast in chapter 13, and then this scarlet beast of chapter 17. Now, one of the interesting things in chapter 12, we might think, well, why is it that here in Revelation, God is going to represent something powerful as a beast, as a great red dragon, in the way that God does? And I think the key to Revelation chapter 12 is its connection back with the beginning of all things in Genesis chapters 3 and 4. So if we want to understand the development of the beast, particularly here, then we want to see about the development of, well, we need to understand Genesis chapter 3 and 4, because God hasn't given us a whole bunch of labels and gone, by the way, here's the name of that kingdom or that nation at that time in history. Here you go. Nice and easy. Like, God hasn't done that. Because actually that's not the important part. God wants us to see that there is a continuous theme and connection of thought and ideas between in what's going on. So even though the labels might change, there is a continuity going on here. And there's a continuity that has been going on from Genesis, from the very beginning. So even though the labels have changed and kingdoms have come and gone and empires of man have risen and fallen, and some of them have taken each other out like they weren't friends. Persians, Babylonians weren't friends. The Greeks and the Romans weren't, well, they became friends later, but, like a time they weren't friends. But they represent a continuity in this story. And I think looking back at Genesis helps us with that. So, and I think that we're directed to do that here in chapter 12 because, I don't know if you noticed, but in chapter 12 and verse 3, so we've got the appearance of the great red dragon in heaven, got 7 heads and 10 horns, and crowns are on the heads. We'll look at that a bit later. But in verse 9, it says that the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to earth, and the angels were thrown down with him. Or in the AV, that old serpent, the devil and Satan. So that phrase, those words, that old serpent, the devil and Satan, what does that make you think of? What association or echo in the Bible does that make you think of? The serpent. Yeah, I mean, it's like, sorry, it wasn't like a tricky one. I wasn't trying to trick anyone. That's right. The serpent right back at the beginning. So here in Revelation, here in chapter 12, and by the way, this same phrase is used in chapter 20 as well. We're directed back to Genesis in the vision, that old serpent, the devil and Satan. So there's something we need to understand about that old serpent, the devil and Satan from Genesis and that story of Genesis 3 and 4 that's going to help us when we come to understanding Revelation chapter 12. So let's go back to Genesis chapter 3 very briefly and have a look at a couple of things that we see in Genesis chapter 3. Now, this is not super big on the screen. Like, I always overestimate how big the font is. But, like, you know what Genesis 3 says, and if you don't, well, we've all got Bibles, so, and I can't change the font now. But it says, we know in Genesis 3, so after they've, the serpents deceived Eve, they've eaten the fruit, they've realized they were naked, and God has come and said, what have you done? And God says to Adam, what have you done? And Adam's like, like you gave, the woman you gave me gave to me and I ate. And so God says, well, what have you done? Well, tell me about this. And the woman said, well, the serpent deceived me and I ate. And so God says to the serpent, because you've done this, curse you above all livestock and above all beasts of the field. On your belly you will go, and dust you'll eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Now we know, of course, that ultimately, like, this is a prophecy about Jesus, that Jesus is the offspring, the seed of the woman, and that he destroyed sin in himself. He crushed the head of the serpent in himself on the cross. But this prophecy is broader than so that's the ultimate, but that's not just happened on the cross in an individual in Jesus. That is ultimately going to be accomplished in the whole world. Sin is going to be sin, and the nature which has the origin of sin, human nature, is going to be removed. So that's 1 Corinthians 15. The last enemy that's destroyed is death, swallowed up in victory. And that's ultimately going to happen at that time. But a couple of things just to notice here. Firstly, that God is putting an enmity. There's a hatred between two ways, between two seeds, two ways of thinking, two groups of people, two communities are going to come from here. And also, so that's one thing in verse 15. But the other thing is just to notice that the serpent is described as one of the beasts of the field. So from Genesis 3, the serpent is described as a beast. It's a beast of the field. Obviously, there's lots of other beasts of the field, but the serpent is described in that way. That's just to notice here. Now, by the way, as it so happens, in Genesis chapter 4, well, wouldn't you know it, there's a man-child born to the woman. So here in the beginning of the story, here in Genesis chapter 4, we've got, in verse 1, we've got Eve saying, I've gotten a man. So Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain. And she said, I've gotten a man from Yahweh. Now, of course, Cain means gotten. I've gotten a man from Yahweh. And so what's the association for Eve? Well, getting a man from Yahweh is clearly associated with the promised seed. I've gotten a man. It's the promised seed. He's the Savior. Like, it's going to happen in my lifetime, because, but of course, Eve didn't know, as nobody knew, that God's time frame is much longer. But she thought...
I wonder if she thought about that every time there was a grandchild born. Because if she lived 1,000 years like Adam, there would have been a lot of anticipation. Yeah.
Well, I think she certainly, like, every time there's another child born, it's a realization that maybe this is bigger and longer and more to this than what I first thought. But, like, it's perfectly natural. You can't blame me for thinking it's a natural thing to think. But turns out Cain wasn't actually, he was the child of the woman, but really he was the offspring of the serpent. In fact, so there's that interesting phrase in verse 7 where it says, because we know that Cain offered his offering and it wasn't accepted, and it says that his face fell and he was angry, and Yahweh says to Cain, why are you angry and your countenance fallen? If you do well, thou shalt not be accepted, and if that is not well, sin lies at the door, sin is crouching at the door and desires to have you, but you must rule over him. And so there's this picture. So what's crouching at the door? Sin's crouching at the door. So here just Yahweh says to Cain, you've got a decision to make, because sin's there desiring to have you. You need to rule over it. Now we know, of course, that Cain turned out to be, well, just like the serpent, he turned out to be a deceiver. He deceived his brother. He said, let's go out to the field. And he said, let's go out to the field so he could murder his brother. And he became a murderer. And then his descendants, and you read the rest of Genesis 4 and 5, his descendants became persecutors of the seed of the woman. They became persecutors of the woman's seed, the people of God, Seth and so on, right through until we've got the flood that is going to wipe all that away, and they're going to start again. So I don't know whether you've noticed, but there's a number of things already, a number of ideas and concepts that are here in the story of Genesis 3 and Genesis 4, which you may have noticed from the imagery of Revelation chapter 12. That here we've got an anticipated man-child coming from this woman. And yet that man-child turns out to not be quite what they were expecting it to be. In fact, quite the opposite. And that man-child is, like Cain, actually part of the thinking of the serpent, the power of the serpent. So here we are. There we've got Genesis 4. By the way, this concept of the thinking of the serpent thinking, and the idea of what Cain did. So if you remember from our John classes, in 1 John chapter 3, John talks about Cain, who was a murderer from the beginning. He was a liar and a murderer, and he was of his father, from the devil, of his father the devil. He's a liar and murderer from the beginning. So John spends a whole chapter talking about Cain and the power of sin, and how the people who are born of God are not like that, because they're born of God. But the people that are born of the devil are like Cain. And there's these two ways. We understand what John means. It's not a supernatural devil. We understand that. But John's talking about how that there's, from the beginning, there's these two powers of thinking, two motivations, two ways. There is the way of the serpent, and there is the way of the woman. And so we find that in Genesis 4, in 1 John 3, and we find that also here in Revelation chapter 12. And this story of the struggle of the two seeds is actually the story of the whole Bible. The whole Bible is the story of the struggle between these two ways. So it won't spend too long because we're talking about the development of the beast, but the struggle between these two ways, looked at it, I'll put enmity between you and the woman. That's the promise of Genesis 3. Romans chapter 8, we know this well, hopefully. The mind of the flesh is hostile to God. The carnal mind is enmity with God. It's not subject to the law of God. It can't be. The mind of the flesh and the ways of God are completely incompatible. They can't coexist together. First, in 1 Peter 5, verse 8, Peter talks about your adversary, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking those who he can devour. Now, I understand that here in this, Peter's actually talking about the authorities at the time, and he talks about them like this. In 1 Corinthians 10, talk about we're not waging war after the flesh. Our warfare is a spiritual warfare. It's a battle of the mind. And in Ephesians 2, Paul talks about the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience. So, just very briefly, the point of this is to say that God wants us to understand from the beginning that there's two ways. There's his way, and there's the way of the serpent. And that God wants us to be following his ways. Now, the way of the serpent was seen in Cain and all those people who were like him. And that's what John's saying. Like all those people that are like Cain, they're part of that way of thinking. They're part of the serpent way of thinking, the serpent line, the serpent group. They're part of this beast system. Now, we see this thinking. So most of the time when we think about we think about Genesis 3 and this idea, we think about that as happening at a personal level, because we know that we've got that struggle in our own minds. You know, that's what Paul talks about in Romans chapter 7. You know, I've got a law in my members, a law in myself. I find that I've got what I want to do, and but I've got sin here with me that's stopping me doing that. And we know that happens inside us. And we know that the victory that Christ had, our Lord had, was the victory over sin, over that desire in himself. So we know most of the time we think about that as at a personal level. But of course, it's not limited to a personal level. Of course, it you know, this thinking of the flesh, the thinking of the serpent, drives individuals. So it's like Cain. That drove him. What says that desires to have you, to dominate you, your mind. It drives individuals. And we meet people like that. Their thinking is after the flesh. But it doesn't just inhabit individuals. It also inhabits communities and groups. And in fact, can motivate nations and powers. And we see this, the thinking, that's the spirit, you know, which Paul talks about in Ephesians, it's the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now works in the sons of disobedience. And we see the serpent in both, so obviously a personal level within ourselves, but you know, the community and national levels, we see that as civil. We can see that power and motivation from the garden, but in civil and military and political forms. So when we come to the beast of Daniel and to Revelation, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing the power of sin described, because you know the beasts are describing nations. We're seeing the power of sin described in its civil, military, and political forms. And this is the power of sin from which has been opposed to God and his people from the garden. It's going to have different labels down through history, but it's still the power of sin. That's what we're seeing. And by the way, that's why these are going to continue until confronted by Christ, and in fact, till the end of the millennium, when it's finally destroyed, because that's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15. So when we're looking at the development of the beast, we're looking at the development of sin in the power of sin in these formats through the phases of the career of those particular beasts. So we journey on a little bit in the Bible. Hopefully that made sense. So by the way, in the Revelation Study Guide, Brother Ashton, yeah, does talk about that, but very briefly. I just thought it needed more highlighting, so I did, and I'm doing it, so I did it. Anyway, this is a great slide, because this is like a nice chiasm, if you like that sort of thing. So just jumping back to Revelation, because we're looking at Revelation Study Guide, the development of the beasts, so we need to go back to Revelation. But then we're going to go back to Daniel. So in Revelation, this is a way of looking at the structure of Revelation from Revelation 12 through to 22. There's other ways you can look at it, but this is a chiastic way. And in this, and looking at it this way reveals that we've come forward to Revelation, but we're still seeing the same struggle between the servants of God, the people of God, and the serpent, the people of the serpent, servants of the serpent. And so we see at the beginning of this, we've got an introduction of the servants of God falling away. So by the way, that's the woman who's pregnant. We can discuss that if you disagree with that. It's, anyway, we can talk about that. I know there's various opinions about that, but this is mine. The servants of God fall away and the dragon appears. Then the beast and the false prophet appear. I changed this side. It's supposed to be the beast. I changed it. We'll do it again. It's supposed to be the beast and the image of the beast, which is what becomes the false prophet, appear. In chapter 13, the bride of Christ is presented before God in chapter 14. Babylon, the harlot, is presented before God. Babylon, the harlot, is destroyed. The bride of Christ is glorified in chapter 19. The beast and false prophet is destroyed. The dragon is destroyed. The servants of God are redeemed. And there's a counterpart from verse 12, the falling away to the redemption. The dragon appears, the dragon's destroyed. The beast and the image of the beast appear, the beast and the false prophet are destroyed. The bride of Christ is presented, the bride of Christ is glorified, and at the center of this is the most dangerous of them all, Babylon, the harlot. Now, by the way, you'll notice that chapter 15 and 16 is missing from this, because that's part of the series of sevens. 7 seals, trumpets, and vials. So, but just to illustrate the theme, that it's a struggle between, the Revelation is providing us a thematic view of the struggle between the serpent and the lamb, the serpent and the people of God. And that's revealed in structure. Okay.
So, Andrew.
Yes.
Is it something new that develops in the line of history of the world, or are the first 11 chapters not related to that?
No. So they are. So in the first 11 chapters, I have to talk about the beast. So I'm just conscious of time. Okay. But in the first 11 chapters, you've got the series of 7. So you've got the 7 ecclesias, the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, and then, chapter 10, you've got the 7 thunders, and then chapter 16, you've got, or 15 and 16, you've got the 7 vials. So you've got a representation of things in one way, and then one of the things that happens here is that the same story of history is retold, but it's retold now with the symbols with these new set of symbols. So you're going back over the same period, but now you've got a new perspective between the beast and the people of God.
Right, thank you. That makes sense.
That's not kind of political and kind of religious, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So we're familiar with this guy. You know who he is? I don't know his name, but this is the image of Daniel chapter 2. So in Daniel chapter 2, we're just going to race through this. Anyone not familiar with Daniel 2? Robert? Okay. That's homework for afterwards. Okay, Daniel 2. You're the head of gold. It says Babylonian Empire lasted 70 years, as it so happens. After him came another kingdom inferior to it. So this is, by the way, just going through Daniel's interpretation of the vision. I'm going to explain it. Medo-Persian Empire, the kingdom that came after Babylon, was inferior. The third kingdom of bronze will be rule over the whole earth. The Greco-Macedonian Empire, it was really Macedonian. The Greeks were latecomers. They're trying to stolen glory and all that sort of thing. Macedonian Empire, 344 to 146 BC. And then a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, just as iron crushes and smashes everything to pieces, it crushed and shattered these. Roman Empire, 146 to 493. And the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay, partly of iron. Divided kingdom, some of the strength of the iron, as you saw, iron mixed with the clay. The divided Roman Empire, 493 to present. Holy Roman Empire, RCC, EU, all of those things. Look at that. But I guess the thing about the feet is that the feet are a continuity of iron, but they're not the same as the legs. So there's still the iron in the feet, which is continued from the legs, but it's different because now it's got clay mixed with it. So there's a change here, but as Daniel says, there's a fourth kingdom, In Daniel 2, there's 4 kingdoms. There's no 5th kingdom. So whatever the feet period is, it's another phase of the 4th kingdom. And then the stone comes, smashes all the pieces, grows to a mountain, fills the whole earth. That's the bit we want. But that's not our subject for tonight, so I'm not going to do that. Daniel 7, do we need pictures? Have we been out of pictures for a while? Okay, we've got pictures. Daniel 7, Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Babylon, lion, Medo-Persia, bear, Greece, leopard, 4 heads, 4 wings, fowl, Rome. Just nasty. Okay, pictures. Okay, words, back to words. So just to remind you, so Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, they're talking about the same or similar, but the difference between Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, sorry, back to pictures, is Daniel 2 is how Nebuchadnezzar saw things. He saw things, this image of the kingdom of men, as awesome. Daniel 7 is how God sees it. God sees the kingdoms of men as wild beasts, less awesome than Nebuchadnezzar saw it. Just saying. So, head of gold, like the lion. The other kingdom, the second was like a bear. Third kingdom of brass. Another like the leopard. Verse 40, the 4th kingdom, strong as iron. After this I saw in the night beast, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, strong iron teeth, broken pieces. Verse 23, this is the important one. The 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms upon the earth and shall break it in pieces. It's destroyed by Christ. Both of these last beasts are destroyed by Christ. And in Daniel 7 and in verse 17 and 18, it says, these great beasts, which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Now, the important thing to note is there's only 4 beasts. There's only 4 kingdoms. And then the kingdom of God, the saints take the kingdom. So these kingdoms, these are obviously the progressive phases of the kingdom of the serpent. Now, obviously, the Babylonians didn't think about the Persians or the Macedonians in that way. The Macedonians didn't think about the Babylonians as like no, they didn't. But from God's perspective, these are just progressive phases of the kingdom of the serpent. And there's 4 of them. And the 4th one is this one here. It's the one that's going to be destroyed by Christ. Now, we know, of course, that in the 4th, even in Daniel 7, it describes a change of phase in the 4th kingdom. You know, you've got the horn being uprooted, you've got all that sort of stuff. It changes. It doesn't stay the same. So just like in Daniel 2, there was a change, in Daniel 7, there's a change as well. So from our perspective, we're still in the phase of the 4th beast. Now, of course, the 4th beast doesn't look like that anymore. Like, it doesn't look like, the Roman power that dominated the Mediterranean like it did in the time of Christ. Obviously, it doesn't look like that. But we're in a phase of this 4th beast because we know, of course, the others have all gone and Christ hasn't come yet. So we're in that phase. So here we are. It's only 4 kingdoms of men and then the kingdom of God. 4th kingdom undergoes significant changes during its existence. Leagues of iron become feet of iron and clay. Daniel 7, little horns sprouts and uproots the 3 horns. The beasts of Revelation are an expansion in the detail in the development of Daniel's 4th beast. So if you recall, in Daniel chapter 7, what was the beast that Daniel wanted to know about? The 4th beast. Daniel didn't ask anything about the lion or the bear or the leopard. They didn't ask any questions about those. You go and look at Daniel 7, he didn't ask any questions about those. He says, well, I want to know the truth of the 4th beast. And so he gets an explanation, and then the angel says to him, look, that's enough. That's for later. So Daniel 12, you need to seal up the book like this is it for you. Because John's going to come along, and when John comes along, he's going to need the extra detail of the explanation of the phases of the fourth beast. He's going to need that because when John comes along, it's the right time for that. So here we are. Speaking of the right time, it's obviously no longer the right time for me. So they're different phases and aspects, but it's one beast. It's the one kingdom of the serpent. Just like Daniel's 4 beasts were the kingdom of the serpent, this is the one kingdom of the serpent, that old serpent, the devil and Satan. But different aspects, different phases. So similar, Daniel's 4th beast. This one's the scarlet coloured beast of Revelation 17. And 10 horns, persecutes, blasphemes, judged by the time of the kingdom. That's, just to see, like, we're using the same language, we're seeing the same imagery in chapter 17. This one's hopefully a little bit clearer, because this has got all the beasts, all the phases of the beast on it. So Daniel's 4th beast, the great red dragon, the sea beast, the earth beast, the scarlet beast. They've all got, well, they don't all have everything, but they've all got similar. You can see certain themes that come through these. That there's a continuity here. So one of the things that, if we just come back to Revelation chapter 12, I'd just like you to notice about Revelation chapter 12. So in Revelation chapter 12, we see a great red dragon that's presented for us in verse 3. And that great red dragon undergoes some changes. But that great red dragon is called that old serpent, the devil and Satan, which at the very introduction took us all the way back to Genesis 3. But we've already done that, so we're not doing it again. But there's conflict, it's cast down. But then in chapter 13, when we come to the next phase of the vision, it says in chapter 13, verse 1, I stood upon the sand of the sea and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea. So this is, taking us back to Daniel, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. So now, in this case, the crowns have moved from the heads to the horns. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, the mouth of a lion. So these are features which come from Daniel's beasts. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So verse 2 is interesting because in verse 2, it tells us that this sea beast comes along and it is given its seat and power and authority by the dragon. So that was the dragon we're reading about in chapter 12. So whatever happens to the dragon in chapter 12, chapter 13, there's still a dragon. Still a dragon who is able to grant authority and power and a seat to this new beast that has come onto the scene. And then in verse 11, so then the beast was wounded. Sorry, verse 3, it was wounded. The wound was healed, and then they all glorified the beast. And then in verse 11, there's another beast comes up, this time out of the earth, and it speaks like the dragon. So there's a connection between this earth beast and the dragon. The sea beast got its seat and power from the dragon, but this earth beast speaks like the dragon. And then also, verse 12, exercises all the power of the first beast before him. Now I'd like us just for a moment to skip over the scarlet coloured beast and just come to, well, let's just come to the next occurrence of the dragon, which is, Revelation 16. So we'll skip the scarlet coloured beast in a moment. Revelation 16, we see the beast, the dragon again. So in Revelation 16 and verse 13, we've got these 3 unclean spirits like frogs that come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. So here in chapter 16, we've got concurrently a dragon and a beast. Now, if we skip over the scarlet coloured beast for a moment and come to chapter 20, we find that we meet our old friend, that old serpent, the devil and Satan. So here in chapter 20 and verse 1, it says, I saw an angel come down from heaven having the key of the bottomless pit, and a great chain in his hand, and he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, that he should deceive the nations no more till 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And then we go on, and at the end of the 1,000 years, which we believe is 1,000 years of the kingdom age, Satan is loosed, the dragon is loosed, and then there's the rebellion, and that's then the dragon is finally destroyed. And that's the end of the, and that's the final end of the serpent. So I have come to the very end of my time. But I had a, if you want, yes, time. Oh, I started late. So I've got just a little slideshow, just going through my understanding of the phases, like what this actually looked like through the story of history. The phases of Daniel's 4th beast, the great red dragon, the sea beast, the earth beast, and then the scarlet coloured beast. So if you're interested, I'm happy to go through that. I'm obviously not going to be able to explain all the details of it, but you might be interested in just seeing how that works, and then how some of these things can be seen. Oh yeah, I know. Well, I'm just going to keep talking until somebody does. I told Mamie the other night, it's like, I can talk for a long time about this subject. It's no problem. Maybe longer than what people want. I probably should check the. There's no comments in GoToMeeting, so we're still good. Okay, so here we are. So this is the Roman Empire in the late 1st century AD, the power of the kingdom of the serpent at the time. Over here, not over here, off the map down here is the land of Israel, where the people of God are. But that's the territory that's dominated by the Roman Empire. We've got John over here on Patmos, and this is the kingdom of the dragon. By the way, they found these dragon heads as which were ensigns that the Romans used in their legion formations. They used this one's found in it's at the Kolbnitz State Museum in a place that I am not even going to try and pronounce, but it's in Germany. Anyway, they found these things, these dragons. So I guess just to say, like, there's the concept of the dragon as a symbol for Rome was a familiar concept and image for the people that received John's message. So but the dragon moved his seat from Rome in, this is not the late 1st century anymore, of course, this is Constantine in the 4th century. The dragon moved his seat over to Constantinople for, organisational reasons, because I won't go into all those, but organisational reasons. And then as time went on, it became difficult to manage, and so the emperors actually split the empire in half into different administrative districts. And you had Caesar and an Augustus on this side, and you had a Caesar and Augustus on this side. And of course, you'll know that one of those was obviously Constantine himself. But the kingdom of the dragon shrank down to these two areas. And now we're heading towards a time of about 476. So this is the ending and the collapse of Western Rome. So we've got the emperor over here in Constantinople, and he's busy with his own problems. And over here in the west, we've got the barbarian hordes, the Avars and the Huns and the Ostrogoths, all descending on Western Rome, and the power of the Caesars and Augustus in Rome are unable to withstand them. And so Western Rome fell. That's 476 when the Goths sacked Rome. And then they appealed. So they appealed to the emperor in the east, but he was busy. And so the Pope in Rome did what he could and made a deal with the Goths, which revived. So this is the deadly wound. This is the deadly wound that's spoken about. This here, gone. Like the whole thing just collapsed in a screaming pile of failure. But it was revived when the popes did a deal with the Goths, and they revived the Roman Empire, the Gothic period of the Roman Empire. So this here is this is the way it's described. I think this is the American Catholic Quarterly Review. Long ages ago, when Rome, through neglect of the Western emperors, was left to the mercy of the barbarous hordes, the Romans turned to the one figure for aid and protection and asked him to rule them, and thus commenced the temporal sovereignty of the popes. And meekly stepping to the throne of Caesar, the vicar of Christ took up the scepter which the emperors, kings of Europe, would have bow in reverence through so many centuries. Here we are in the beast of the sea. Because, well, someone has to do it. It's going to be me. So here's the beast of the sea. Now, this power, this was actually delegated to by the emperor in the east. The emperor in the east acknowledged this reality and gave the popes their authority in the west. You're our representative, you Pope over there in the west, you're our representative of Rome, of the Roman Empire. It's quite like Constantinople. The emperor of Rome is over here. I'm the emperor of the Romans over here in Constantinople. Sounds crazy to us, but that's how they saw themselves. Anyway, you're our representative over there, and they all still considered themselves one Roman Empire. But in reality, the Pope over here in Rome did whatever he wanted and paid no regard to the emperor over there. And the emperor just liked to pretend, and everyone just pretended that was how it was. We're all still one Rome, but he gave permission to what he couldn't control. Anyway, so this rolled on to about 800, and you never know what happened in 800. Things really would have gone badly for the popes in Western Rome. It was really going badly because there so happened to be some barbarians just at the north in France here. Sorry, I haven't shrunk the thing down, but up here called the Lombards, who really were not on board with this arrangement. But it turned out that Charlemagne really quite liked the Pope. And so he stepped in and brought the power of the Franks, the origin of the French nation, down here and dominated this northern part of Italy and reasserted the power of things here. But he created another empire, the Empire of Charlemagne, which we will come to know in history as the Holy Roman Empire. Now, the beast of the sea doesn't actually go away. Like, it's still hanging around there in the background. This Western Roman Empire concept is still hanging around there, but it's not the dominant power anymore. The dominant power is this beast of the earth. Now you can see, by the way, the beast of the sea is this sort of Mediterranean area around here. The beast of the earth is this sort of central European earth. Now, we actually see that in Revelation 13, where it says that it exercises all the power of the beast before it. And then it causes all the earth to worship the beast whose deadly wound was healed. So that's the beast with the deadly wounds healed, beast of the sea. Causes all the earth to worship, and in fact makes a little image of the beast. Now, the little image of the beast that the Charlemagne made was this little, set of states that was given to the Pope. So I have this little set of states in Italy, which were given to the Pope as his little image of the big beast. This is your little bit. You can rule over that. Now, Charlemagne here. So we think about, in reflection, we think about Charlemagne and this as a transition, as a change. Now we've gone from the Western Roman Empire to the kingdom of the Franks. But that's not how Charlemagne saw it. Charlemagne saw this. In fact, he didn't even see himself as the emperor of the Western Roman Empire. He saw himself as the emperor of the Romans. He was the next Caesar, the next Augustus. So anyway, I'm going to read the whole thing, but basically it's saying he didn't consider that the current emperor in the Western, in Constantinople was legit. He's like, I'm actually the true emperor of the Romans. I'm the heir of Julius Caesar and Charlemagne the Sixth. Not the guy in Rome, but that's who I am. So he saw himself and his kingdom as a continuation of the kingdom of the dragon and the serpent. Now, we roll on in history, and of course, things now look very different, actually a whole lot smaller in most cases. They really haven't done very well. But the shape of the borders of things have moved around a bit, and of course, by now, we've come to 1600s, Constantinople has fallen, and the seat of the dragon has moved north to Moscow, where the Byzantine, which was the inheritor of the Byzantine Empire at that time, and all the things, paraphernalia that go with it. We've still got these other guys going on over here. We come along to about 1806, and it's all about to get really messy. I don't know, does anybody know what happened about this time? 1800s? Like what happened to this picture? It's all going to go really bad. This is like a French guy called Napoleon. Napoleon. You going to say Napoleon? Oh, Napoleon. Yeah. Napoleon's a French guy called, actually Corsican. Napoleon, he's going to come along and he's going to get rid of all of this stuff. He's going to get rid of this, and he's going to get rid of this, and he's going to get rid of this. Well, it's actually going to come in 1866, unification of Italy under Garibaldi, and Victor Emmanuel was going to get rid of that. But Napoleon came along and got rid of all of that. And it looked like, for a period, that what happened to the beast? Where's the fourth beast? Is it all gone? The beast of the sea is now gone. The beast of the earth lost their power. But don't worry, dragon's still there. But Napoleon had a go at that too, but it really didn't work. It really worked out badly for Napoleon. But then we've got.
And now the Pope's got 10 square kilometres or something.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Has he even got that? It's pretty small.
Smallest nation on the planet.
Smallest nation on the planet. So, but the Pope went from having his own power to being to turning into the false prophet, because he lost that little image of the beast empire. They got rid of that. Garibaldi, Victor Emmanuel, unified Italy, got rid of all of that, and turned into the false prophet. So now without his not even a little replica beast empire going on. And the dragon obviously been pushed all the way back. So in our time, we've now started to see the redevelopment of the scarlet-coloured beast, the false prophet, the scarlet-coloured beast, and of course we've still got the dragon over here. Now, I don't know exactly the shape of the scarlet-coloured beast. You know, I mean, I've kind of drawn some things on here. I don't think every country in here is actually a member of the European Union. I don't even know if the European Union is exactly what form the scarlet-coloured beast is going to take when Christ comes, or whether there's going to be some other national arrangement. But what the Revelation 17 tells us, we've got in Revelation 17 the appearance of the scarlet-coloured beast, which is the last evolution, the last phase and development of Daniel's fourth beast, the last phase of the kingdom of the serpent. And, you know, I guess, you know, we've got over here the dragon, over here the scarlet-coloured beast. By the way, whatever's going on in, like this little bit that I left clear over here, you might recognise that country over there, Ukraine. So whatever's happening there, like we know that eventually the dragon and the beast are going to reconcile. Like there's going to be a reconciliation, because these are two parts of the kingdom of the serpent, that old serpent, the devil and Satan. They've got different labels, because the Russians and the Europeans wouldn't see this at all like this. But they're just two parts of the kingdom of the serpent, the last evolution of it from the time of Genesis, you know, which eventually, and like I said, exactly what the shape of this is, and you know, whether the dragon's going to come down and reseat itself at Constantinople, we can talk about that over supper. But this is, you know, we come to the final. So at the final phase, we've still got a dragon, and we've got Revelation 17, the scarlet-coloured beast, and it's the scarlet-coloured beast that makes war with the Lamb, and the Lamb overcomes and destroys. So that's Revelation 17, and then the dragon is bound 1,000 years. We read that in Revelation chapter 20. So anyway, we already read this one. So I just wanted to note this for you, just to remind you that, of course, that the end of the story, which is, of course, the important bit that we're interested in, is for all the vagaries. By the way, I don't have any idea like how these people are going to get together, or what this looks like, or what structure it is, or how we go from here to some sort of arrangement like this, or exactly how it is that the woman rides the beast. But Revelation tells us that this is what's in store for the future. But beyond all of that stuff, we know that in the end, the beast, the false prophet, the dragon are destroyed. The people of God, his servants, are redeemed. Because at the end of the story of Revelation is the conclusion of the story that began in Genesis 3 with the enmity between with what God said to the serpent. I'll put enmity between you, your seed and her seed. It shall crush your head, you will bruise its heel. And in the end, the serpent will be crushed, and the people of God, together with their Lord, will be glorified. So for us, we see what's going on in the nations. We see the power of sin animating those nations and driving them towards the future that God has outlined. And that gives us confidence that Christ will come, our Lord will come and redeem his people. Sorry for, I probably better stop there. That's all right.